Here's something that will really get us going in the September 21st edition of the Observer. The latest rumors, and again, any plans in wrestling more than 48 hours from now are subject to change, and long-term plans are almost definitely not going to happen like that. But anyway, the title is scheduled to go from Goldberg to Hogan to Nash, or from Goldberg to Nash if they can cut Hogan out of the equation. Although that may all be to keep Nash happy, because a happy Nash supplies a lot of good ideas. Was this the common thinking in the back at the time, that you need to pacify Nash?
I think Nash garnered a lot of respect because he did have a lot of good ideas. I think they tried to pacify a lot of people,
Right.
and not only Nash. So I don't think it would be unfair to single out Nash to try to pacify him. I mean, they try to pacify Hogan. They try to keep Scott Hall happy. They try to obviously keep Goldberg happy, keep DDP happy. And that's not easy to do. It's not easy to do, Conrad, when you're doing so much TV and you don't want to have a screw job finish to where no one gets hurt, theoretically, no one does a job, because all of a sudden your combinations are going together and the fans have seen everything. Someone's got to do a job. Someone's got to go down for the 3 count or whatever. And it's hard to pick someone to do that. So I think this not trying to keep Nash happy, they try to keep a lot of people happy within the framework of what they have, which was a lot of TV shows.
Let's talk about World War III and Nash winning. This is happening at a time when there's a lot of cliques backstage, and Hogan has Eric's ear, but so does Nash. And supposedly Hogan and Bischoff have a falling out when Bischoff decides to go with Nash as booker. And he books himself to win the Battle Royal and face Goldberg at Starrcade. And now let's remember, as we talked about earlier, when Hogan agreed to put over Goldberg in July, the idea was Hogan would get a return match and be the first to beat him. But supposedly Bischoff makes this decision to move to Nash because Raw has just beaten Nitro handily a few weeks in a row, and Hogan was in the featured spot on those shows that lost. So Eric goes with his gut, thinks it's time for a change. And instead, Hogan announces he's retiring on the Tonight Show. Tony, Nash becoming booker, were you for it or against it? I know you mentioned he had a lot of good ideas, but did you think in the end it was the right call?
Well, at that time, sure. You've got to change. You've got to have somebody come up with fresh ideas and do things differently. If nothing else, because we were turning out so much television and so many pay-per-views, things got stale in a hurry, so you had to turn with somebody else. I would have been in favor of anybody being in charge of booking at that time.
So let's recap Goldberg's pay-per-view run as champ here. He wins the belt on July 6th. That weekend, his match is changed on pay-per-view. It's no longer a tag match. Now he's facing Kurt in a title defense. He loses, he wins the match. Kurt loses. We go to August. We throw Goldberg in a giant battle royal with the NWO. He wins. We go to September. He's not on the show. We go to October. His pay-per-view match main event starts, and the fucking thing goes off the air. Yeah. Now we're in November for World War III. You want to guess what he had going on there?
Oh, go ahead.
No match. No match at all in November. Instead, they do a contract signing on Nitro for Nash and Goldberg and say that Goldberg won't defend the belt before he faces Nash at Starrcade. Bigelow continues his feud, constantly trying to attack Goldberg out of the ring, in the ring, backstage, outside, whatever. And it's worth mentioning that the shows here are maybe suffering creatively, which is what we're kind of having fun with, but somehow WCW is still setting records. On the 30th of November, they draw the third largest crowd and the all-time record for pro wrestling in the state of Texas, which turns out to be more than 31,000 fans paying more than $755,000 and another $257,000 in merchandise. Tony, when you see numbers like this, despite all the bullshit we've talked about, Bischoff had to be feeling invincible at this point. Am I right?
Yeah, he had to be feeling that the sky was the limit for this company because the numbers were proving that. But I think the disconnect or the problems that we had backstage with communication and everything was starting to move us downhill.
By mid-December, Dave wrote, "Everyone is noticing how rapidly Goldberg is cooling off. A few months back, his merchandise was huge, and now it's actually been nicknamed Coldberg." Can you remember a point where Goldberg's merchandise started to really cool off?
I can't remember the actual merchandise, but I can tell you that the reason was not Goldberg's fault. It's just the way we handled him or failed to handle him.
Yeah, I mean, we just ran through the pay-per-views, and that's hard to argue. I mean,
sure.
So the middle of December, they're running house shows in Tulsa, which is Goldberg's hometown, and he's working with the Giant, who's on his way out. Bill accidentally knocks himself silly on a turnbuckle and is legitimately hurt. He goes to the finish, but the matches for the rest of the house show loop just aren't the same. He's probably concussed, and if you've watched Monday Night Raw recently, you probably saw that. So we're finally here. We're 15 months in. We've got an undefeated streak of 173-0, a U.S. title reign, and nearly 6 months as world champ. It's time. Lots of folks debate this even today, but it's worth mentioning Starrcade 98 drew 16,066 fans, drawing $584,236 and another $114,000 in merchandise. It's the largest gate for a WCW pay-per-view event in history and the fourth largest ever for the company. And I'm sure we'll talk about Bischoff beating Ric Flair at Starrcade another time, but let's focus on Goldberg for now. It may have made sense for Bigelow to be the one to interfere, considering that's what they'd been building to for weeks, or perhaps even Chris Jericho, considering that's what they'd been building to for months, but none of that happened. Instead, it was the Booker's buddy, Scott Hall, who used a taser gun on Goldberg, allowing Nash to hit Goldberg with a jackknife power bomb and pin Goldberg for the very first time after about 11 minutes. And folks today are still critical of this, but if you watch the tape back, the live crowd exploded. The live reports from the show, though, say that after the show went off the air, all of this turned to booze. Tony, you were there. What really happened? Was this a success as far as the live crowd, or did they turn on it once it went off the air?
I'm not so sure they turned on it once they went off the air. And I think the use of Scott Hall, now we can say the Booker's buddy, Scott Hall, but they were kind of tied at the hip as
the outsiders.
The outsiders, Hall and Nash, Razor Ramon and Diesel. So I don't see that being a problem with him coming in with a taser. And the only way to beat this guy was to use something like that.
Right.
And again, the live crowd exploded after the show went off the air. This turned to booze. Now, are they booing the heels, or are they booing the angle of him losing? See, that's the kind of thing there I'm not so sure of.
Well, let me ask you this. Whose idea was it to beat Goldberg? Was this Kevin Nash's?
Yes, I don't know.
Do you remember who pitched the cattle prod?
No, I do not.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the decision here, because Nash has been criticized for this, and he's often said he wasn't booking at the time, but he was, right?
From what I remember, he was.
And he also says, and maybe this is accurate, if I was trying to put myself over, why would I lose the belt a week later with the finger poke of doom? Nash contends that this would allow Goldberg to look strong again, chasing for the title, which had been the formula that worked so well when the NWO was at its hottest with Sting. And since he had cooled off and this Goldberg stuff had happened and you were piping in chants, and maybe he didn't need to be the champ, maybe he needed to be the guy chasing. Do you agree with that decision? I mean, in fairness, an undefeated streak isn't really the way wrestling works long time. I mean, how do you book your way out of that if it doesn't ever end? The guy just retires undefeated? It's unrealistic.
Right. Well, to me, the old adage and the thing that always worked in wrestling was the babyface chasing the heel, and the heel cheating and lying at every turn, and it was the chase that got him back. And I don't think Goldberg needed to win every match, and in hindsight, this might have been a good decision to have him be the chaser.
No, I can't say that it was the wrong decision to get the belt off of him. Featured prominently, but now that he's got his hands on the wheel a little more, they're almost non-existent from television, despite being pretty prominently featured in more recent months. So even when he goes out and loses to Rey Mysterio on TV, Meltzer would say he did it as a way to set the example, to get everyone to lose clean when asked, and basically lip service for the people who were saying he wasn't going to push smaller guys, he pushed the smallest guy. And he did this after, of course, you guys took his mask and we'll table that for another time. But Meltzer also says this is a world where every idea and theory changes every Tuesday afternoon when the ratings come in, and all it takes is a few good shows to put WCW back in serious competition. And even the worst show only seems to create 1 week's worth of damage. What do you make of him saying, Nash losing to Mysterio was just to manipulate everybody else? And how true is this where we say every idea and theory can change on a Tuesday afternoon?
Well, it's fucking profound. What a profound statement. I mean, any idea in theory could change in any moment, in any environment. So, if what he's trying to say is, we're shifting creative, we're trying new things, probably in a bit of a panic mode. Maybe one of the reasons that, Kevin, I can't speak for Kevin. I can't tell you what was going through his mind, in terms of his involvement in some of these decisions vis-a-vis the Juventud Guerrera situation that you just brought up. Maybe because, as you said, ratings were in a decline. Things weren't working as well. Maybe one of the reasons, Kevin, I'm suggesting this is a maybe one of the reasons that Kevin was making a change is because we had to try to, what are you going to do? The same thing over and over and over again? Expect something different to happen? It's just, when you ask me, what do I have to say about his comments? They're just, consistently, absurd in most cases. Dave's opinion is Dave's opinion. His reporting of this backstage political patent place that he seems to want to script every week is just not accurate. He wasn't there. He was, I should say, at this point, and maybe still is, most likely still is, relying on stooges that tell him what he wants to hear or work him just to see if the things that people feed him, he'll actually print to entertain themselves. I mean, he was as much of a victim of that as anything else. It's just when it gets to this level of fiction and bizarreness, there's not much else I could do but just shake my head and go, what the hell?
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.